Welcome back to the channel, guys. Since Friday's video, we had a huge sell-off here in Bitcoin, seeing price shoot down almost 6%. At the same time, we're actually seeing the dollar pull back massively, lining back up with our fractal here again. On top of that, we had the Bitcoin dominance shoot back to the upside, exactly like it did in 2021. We even had some altcoins like Dogecoin reject back into their ranges, and all of that was on the back of negative jobs data as the numbers came in much lower than expected, which ended up causing a massive crash in the US dollar currency index, which has now caused a possible rate cut at the next meeting on the 17th of September. So lots to jump into today, guys. Let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to start with is just the absolute negative onslaught of news that we had come in on Friday. We had posts being made by sitting presidents about nuclear submarines being put on the border of Russia, combined with the negative jobs data, which was a massive miss and a major decrease from previous data, which then led to the dollar crashing and, most importantly, the potential for a rate cut at the next meeting, which then caused Bitcoin to drop 6%. Caused the dollar to crash right back to the regions that we were looking for it to crash to, caused the Bitcoin dominance to shoot back to the upside, and it caused the altcoin market and coins like XRP here to pull back quite aggressively. Even if we have a look at the total altcoin market here, you can see that we are now finding support on the 618 Fibonacci retracement level. And all of this is extremely bullish for the market, surprisingly, because not only have we seen the dollar continue to act like our fractal, which if you haven't watched last week's video, this fractal is pulled from 2021 right down in these lows here, where you can see that during this time here from April of 21 to May of 21, this was roughly a 40 to 50 day period where the dollar crashed about 5% over about 50 days. And that is when we actually seen alt season in 2021. During this exact same time, this was the Bitcoin dominance here. And you can see that from pretty much the start of April, it broke down leading into May, which was the same time all of this happened. From April into May, not only on the Bitcoin dominance have we seen similar structures here, and we've actually seen the dominance spike back to the upside just like it did in 2021, and now looking for it to actually move down back to the bottom of this range. But the dollar here actually acting exactly like the fractal we pulled from 2021, rejecting straight back into these support levels. And what we are looking for now is the dollar to shoot back to the upside, which unfortunately for the rest of the cryptocurrency market does most likely mean we are going to see a bit of consolidation. Now that the $114,000 region was swept and we have gone a lot deeper, I think while the dollar goes for that final push up back into this resistance level, that we will see the rest of the crypto market, including Bitcoin here, actually just consolidate until about mid-August. And that once this consolidation is over and we actually start to see the dollar break down, I think is when we'll see the second phase of the alt season. Even here on the Bitcoin dominance, we should start to see this break down roughly mid to late August. Now, if we jump into a few select altcoins here, we can see the altcoin market is holding on the 618 support level, which is fine. However, if we jump into something like Dogecoin here, I want to show you something really interesting. And back when Dogecoin was breaking out in early July, we actually drew this trend line here, and this trend line here and this purple resistance level was pulled from the way Dogecoin reacted in August, September, October, and November, leading into Dogecoin's pump here where it ripped 340%. And what you can see here is that this purple box is the resistance level set by Dogecoin here after going on a bit of a run earlier in the year, and that this resistance level and this trend line has simply been applied to the way price is reacting today. Same resistance level in this purple box here, taken from the same regions, and even this trend line which was taken here on the rejection from this purple box on these two highs, similar to the way in 2024 Dogecoin rejected from this similar level and then set these two highs. And then what you ended up seeing was price smash back down below this trend line, set this double bottom, and essentially from then on up, Dogecoin's price shot 340%, and it lasted about 48 days. Now, I do believe we are in similar regions where we have seen price shoot back below this trend line and set this low. If you have a look today, this is essentially the trend line, and this is the low I think we've set, and I think we will end up pushing a little bit higher and retesting the lows, similar to the way things played out. But I want to draw your eyes to the expansion move that happened here. This lasted 48 days, and it was a 340% pump. Now, if we pull that out on today's chart and we have a look at what's about 48 days here, 48 days takes us to the 20th of September. Now, what's funny about this date is that the 20th of September is just 3 days after what's expected to be the very first rate cuts. As you can see in the top left here, 17th of September is when the Fed is pricing in the first rate cut. And all of this is on the back of the negative jobs data. And although these numbers are potentially manipulated, the person that actually came out with these numbers just got fired. So there's a high likelihood that these numbers are manipulated so that we can see the Fed actually cut. And if you've watched previous videos, you'll understand why, if we do go into a cutting phase, I believe that'll be bearish for the markets. However, it is looking like that September 17th date, we will see a rate cut, like we discussed in previous videos last week, when the chance of a rate cut was just merely 30 to 40%, which coincides with seeing Dogecoin rip for the next 48 days, just like it did back in October and November, which takes us to that 20th of September, which is quite close. Now, this is just one altcoin. And if we have a look at a few of the other altcoins across the market, you can see that even though we've had such a big sell-off and there's so much fear out there right now, you can see that even coins like SUI here are holding these support levels perfectly. HBAR is pulling back and holding the support of the consolidation range, and that a lot of the coins here, even XLM, holding the same range. Even ADA is holding similar levels here, sitting at its mid-range where we marked out this black line in last week's video. Some of the stronger coins like XRP are actually sitting above their mid-range and their consolidation range highs. You can see we didn't get XRP to get back to that roughly $2.65 level. It did hold up and is actually bouncing quite well now in comparison to the rest of the market. But a lot of the coins, even CRV here, bouncing back, finding support on the same region. So across the entire crypto market here, everything's bullish. And even if we look at Bitcoin and take into account how many negative news narratives came out during this sell-off and all the drama and all the fear out there on Twitter, all Bitcoin did was just backtest its previous all-time high, which it set back on the 23rd of May. So to have the Bitcoin price sitting at 114,000 with all the negativity, all the drama, all the news events unfolding, even talks of World War III with the submarines positioned off the coast of Russia, reminds me a lot of what happened back on the 23rd of June with the whole war in the Middle East and threats of nuclear war. And to see us find a bottom and bounce on the back of the same negative news drama is no surprise, as longer viewers of the channel here will know that all the negative news usually comes in at the bottoms. It never happens at the tops. So I do think we have seen a bit of a low here on Bitcoin and that we should bounce. However, because of the severity of the crash that we had here, I think before we can start to see price shoot back to the upside, we will go into a bit of an accumulation range, which I think would look something like this for Bitcoin. And I think we could even see the lows get swept here, potentially even have 111,000 come through, which would make sense if we were expecting the DXY to actually push higher, as money is rotating out of assets into the dollar. It also lines up with the potential of seeing the Bitcoin dominance actually correct back to these lows and then actually shoot up again. I think that would be in a moment where we could see Bitcoin sell off and set that 111,000. And if you're wondering where we've got this drawing from, this is actually exactly how things played out back in 2021 during this stall out period here for the Bitcoin dominance, where you can see that once the Bitcoin dominance went in this first phase of selling off, there was this pushback to the highs here, a sell off, and then another pushback right here to the highs for the Bitcoin dominance. And I think what we're going through right now is this pushback to the highs, and I do expect the dominance to correct back to the lows here and then sell off, which will give us the alt season that I'm expecting to happen in the back end of August leading into September, which lines up perfectly with what I'm seeing here for Dogecoin as an example of just one altcoin, as I do believe it is forming lows and will go through a similar accumulation range down here, just like it did back in October before it ended up pumping in November. So guys, moving forward throughout this week and into next week, I am expecting just a bit of choppy price action and a bit of a consolidation range to be formed before we can actually see Bitcoin break to the upside. I don't believe we'll complete this entire fractal here that I have pulled from Bitcoin in a previous correction, and that I do think in a moment like this here, we should see price actually shoot to the upside. As you can see, this also lines up with about that 15th to 16th of August level, where I think the dollar will also top out at the same zone. However, I do think the altcoins will outperform once we see Bitcoin break out from this consolidation structure that I think it's going to form over the next week or two. And that I do think August and September are still going to be the most bullish months here for crypto and the altcoins, and that we should see a 30 to 40 day period of absolute craziness and essentially what we all call an alt season. And during that period, I think Bitcoin will push to 150K. I think we will also see a $10 XRP, as that will be the perfect environment for that. which if you've caught previous videos, you can see the $150,000 target for Bitcoin is actually based off the M2 Global Liquidity Index here, which is just the money supply. And you can see that when the M2 here in blue actually set this high, not long later, Bitcoin actually pushed up and set similar highs. Before then, the M2 pulled back and consolidated. Bitcoin then pulls back and consolidates. The M2 breaks to the upside, goes for a corrective move here before then pushing higher. Bitcoin breaks to the upside, does the ABC correction we discussed on the channel, then breaks to the upside. And now we're seeing at the same levels, Bitcoin is actually pulling back and back testing its previous all-time high. We'd actually seen the M2 money supply actually pull back and back test these same levels, but after that happened, we actually did see price push up, grind a little higher, little correction along the way, and then that 5-wave parabolic move to that $150,000 level, which again, from last week's video, we have drawn out here in the orange. As you can see, there is a little correction along the way around 130,000, and then we are looking for that 5-wave parabolic move to take us to that $150,000 Bitcoin, which at the same time I think is when we will see the dollar actually break down from these levels and give us that alt season, and we should start to see the Bitcoin dominance actually break down from these levels, all while Bitcoin actually continues to consolidate in this range. And I think when we see Bitcoin break down, maybe even to these $111,000 regions, and then eventually break from here, and we should start to see altcoin outperformance, like Dogecoin here, for example. But just remembering our higher time frame perspective here, as you can see, XRP and a lot of these altcoins are doing really well. They're just bouncing off support regions. As you can see, ADA bouncing off this level, XLM pretty much bouncing off similar regions, HBAR actually bouncing off this level here, SUI bouncing off the same level, even CRV coming back testing and bouncing off the same regions. However, there are some altcoins like TIA, which aren't bouncing as well, and you can see have actually pushed through that support level and are now finding resistance against that same level that a lot of the other stronger coins in the market are finding support on top of. So guys, if you enjoyed this type of content, feel free to leave a like on the video. If you're new here, you can subscribe down below. If you have any questions about what's been discussed today, feel free to drop them down below in the comments section, and I'll see you guys in the next video.